Welcome to Access to Inspiration, the podcast where we bring you conversations with remarkable people who inspire us to think differently about the world and our place in it. I'm Sue Stockdale, your host, and today I'm speaking with Alice Morrison, adventurer, author, and TV presenter. Alice has walked across deserts and immersed herself in cultures from Morocco to Saudi Arabia. In this episode, Alice shares her experiences of resilience, discovery and connection, from surviving the Moroccan earthquake to navigating the vast landscapes of Saudi Arabia on foot. Her insights into adventure, cultural understanding and the power of storytelling, I'm sure will leave you feeling both inspired and curious about the world beyond your doorstep. As always, you can follow along with this episode by reading the transcription on our website at accesstoinspiration.org. Welcome to the podcast, Alice Morrison. It's lovely to speak to you today.
Well, thank you for having me. Two Scottish adventurers on one podcast.
I know, that's fantastic. It's really exciting. You're in Scotland as we're having this call, Alice.
I am.
But normally, of course, you would be in Morocco, in your home base there.
Yeah.
And it's Ramadan just now. How does that shape things when you're in Morocco?
Well, Ramadan's very, very important, obviously. So there are 2 billion Muslims worldwide, and people usually start fasting for Ramadan when they're about 11. They do a few days, and then once they get older, they do the full thing. So all my neighbours are fasting, and it means that you don't eat or drink anything between the break of dawn and then sunset. So what that means at this time of year is 13 hours of no food, no water, or you certainly can't have a cigarette or anything like that. So it's kind of nil by mouth. It shapes everything, really. The truth is I'm slightly fleeing Ramadan because I have to do it when I'm at home. And this year I did 5 days and then I was like, oh, mate, I don't know if I've got the strength because I'm not Muslim and it's really, really difficult. So I completely take my hat off to all my lovely Muslim friends and brothers and sisters. And it's such an effort of will and of sacrifice. And it's a really good thing. And the thing I would say about Ramadan is it genuinely makes you think properly about all of those who don't have food and who don't have access to clean water and for whom hunger is a daily necessity, because actually being properly hungry is awful. It messes with your head. You can't concentrate. It stops you from reaching your full potential, I would say.
But I guess you've had your fair share of challenges, Alice, whether it's eating no food or other things along in your lifetime as an adventurer. What sticks out in your mind most of all that's been most challenging during your journeys?
Well, it's very hard because every single journey, every single adventure, I would say, has its challenges. I mean, if we're talking about the latest one, which is Saudi, the biggest challenge was I had terrible blisters. So for 3 weeks, at least, I was walking on feet that were agony, really. So every step I took was self-inflicted pain. And I think that is very difficult to come to terms with. A, you're in pain, which nobody wants to be in pain. And B, you're doing it to yourself because the answer to stopping the pain is stopping walking. But of course, I believed I couldn't do that because I was on this quest and it's very important to me. So I had to make the choice to knowingly and willingly and freely inflict serious pain on myself. So that was a bit of a psychological mess up and a physical one. And also, again, like hunger, pain really messes with you. It makes you very, very tired, I think, just keeping your head together. The hours you've got to walk and you're in pain. So you feel that all the time. So yeah, that was the hardest thing most recently.
And you're going back for the second half of your epic, is it 2,500 kilometres across the north to south of Saudi Arabia?
It'll be slightly less, we think, in the end. It'll probably be 2,300, but we haven't quite plotted the route yet for the second half. I can't wait to get back. To be honest, it was the most incredible and uplifting and joyous experience walking across Saudi so far. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'll just make sure that I manage my feet a bit better.
Well, at least you know what to do or what to look out for next time. I must say I've been in Saudi a few times working over the last few years, and it certainly challenged my preconceptions about the country and its people. From the things I've read that you've expressed about your journey so far, Alice, that seems to have been something that's been quite eye-opening for you about the welcome that you've had from the Saudi people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you've been there, obviously you've experienced this yourself, I would say. I just encountered so much warmth and hospitality, genuine hospitality, and everybody wanted to help us. everybody wanted to give me some assistance. Now, they've never met me. I'm a strange Scottish woman walking across Saudi Arabia. I look odd. I am odd. And yet they would bend over backwards to try and give me some assistance, to welcome me to the country. Just so warm. I mean, really so fantastic. And then also the other thing, I don't know if you found this, Sue, but they're really funny people. They like a laugh.
Yeah.
These are party animals. Any excuse for some kind of celebration or marking of an occasion, and they love a prank. Oh my goodness, and a joke. So I had an amazing time. And I think the stereotype in the press is of a religiously very severe country where people are oppressed. Well, that's not what I found. I found a nation of incredibly hospitable, very jolly people.
Now, one could imagine and describe you as a modern day Gertrude Bell.
Oh, thank you very much. I'll take it.
One of the books I'm reading just now, the Virago book of women travellers. I'm sure if there's another new edition of this, your name will be in there, Alice, with all of the amazing adventures you've done. For the listener that doesn't have a sense of your CV, there's many, many places that you've been. To me, it seems predominantly Middle East and Africa, and you've done something in the Himalayas as well. What attracts you to that region of the world?
It's very simple. It's my background. So I was brought up in Africa. I was brought up until I was about 11 in East and West Africa. My first 8 years were in Uganda. My parents were teachers there. So those very, very early memories are incredibly important. And I'm sure if you've got children or grandchildren or you yourself will see how as you go through life, you tend to gravitate back towards those very early experiences. They're very meaningful. They imprint on you. So I think it's no surprise that I feel very comfortable going back to Africa. And then the Middle East, because I studied Arabic at university here in Edinburgh. Since I was 18, it's been one of the very important aspects of my life. Studying Arabic, Islam, Middle Eastern culture gave me a huge insight into a culture that was totally different from my own and so rich that, again, it was quite early on in my life and it just stayed with me. And even if I haven't always worked in it, I'm coming back to it. And now it's such a great pleasure for me to use my Arabic all the time and to learn more and more and more about the countries I'm going around and the people I meet and the culture. I mean, I find it endlessly fascinating.
In those university days, Alice, what made you want to study Arabic in the first place?
I've talked about this before because it was very good advice from my parents. My parents, obviously, as everyone's parents are, huge influence on my life, a very positive influence on my life. I had to choose because I went to school in Scotland. So I left when I was 17. So I chose my university subjects when I was 16. I mean, Sue, what did you know when you were 16?
Nothing. I think I wanted to be a cook on an oil rig then.
Oh, well, that's quite an exciting option. I hadn't thought of that one. That's it. I think when you're 16, you know very little. And my parents really guided me. I was good at languages. I was good at English. They guided me towards Arabic and I studied Arabic. And it was the best piece of advice I've ever been given.
And in between doing your studies and being a full-time adventurer, you've had a career in journalism. How do you think that shaped what you're doing today? Because to me, it might be obvious around storytelling that seems to be what you're passionate about doing as well as exploring.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's very nice. I'm so glad you've extrapolated that because it's true. There are three things I love about my life. Number one is doing it, basically just doing it. And especially the expeditions, I absolutely love. I can't wait for, tomorrow I'm going to have to get up at like 5 a.m. I've got to pack tonight and I'll be setting off to walk across the coastal path. I can't wait. I'm really excited. I love doing it. I love the feeling of it and just being so in tune with the natural world, being so in tune with yourself, even when it's a bit rubbish, because it quite often is, like when everything hurts and you're cold or you're wet or you're hot or you're hungry, or thirsty, but I love doing it. The second thing I love is communicating it. I love taking photos, doing videos, writing, blogging, podcasting, everything. I love communicating the adventure because just telling people about the amazing things that are out there. And if they like the stories, of course, that's just fantastic. And then the third thing I like is if people like it and they say, "Oh, you're marvelous." I'm like, "Oh, thank you so much." So I think that's a very truthful answer. But the storytelling is hugely important to me. I also use storytelling very much as a way to make sense of my own experience and life. And if you don't mind if I give you an example of that.
Oh, I'd love to have an example, yeah.
So a year past September, I was caught in the Moroccan earthquake, which tragically killed 3,000 people. And there are still many thousands who are still living in tents waiting to rebuild their houses. So it was a terrible catastrophe, and it was absolutely terrifying when it happened. I did think I was going to die. And I was in my community, so I was with people, thank God, and looked after. But I remember we all escaped from our houses and left the mountain because we're in the mountains, which are very fragile, as you can imagine. And I live with 4 families. So we all went down our little tiny community. We went down to the big car park at the bottom of the mountain because it's flat and concrete. The whole road was destroyed by boulders. Houses were falling down. So we wanted to be away from stuff falling on us. And we spent the night in the car park. And that night in the car park, I wrote a blog about being in the earthquake and posted it the next morning before I'd even phoned anyone to say I was okay. Because I had to cycle out of the valley to find mobile phone signal. And then I did loads of reporting for the BBC and for other outlets. But the reason I did that was I wanted to tell the story, but also I wanted to make sense of it to myself and kind of calm myself down, if you like, and be able to detach a little bit from the fact that I'm in a small mountain village with no signal, no electricity, in the pitch black. We're all sitting in the car park, freezing half to death. And there's just been a ginormous earthquake and we don't know what's happening because we can't communicate with anyone. So that's another aspect of storytelling. It is partly to make sense of things for me.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, Alice. And I was noting down before our conversation, I thought, what are the big themes that seem to come out for me from your experiences that I've read about and watched and listened to? And now 6 words I've written down here.
This is quite exciting. Go for it.
I want to see what you make of it. This is my summary of the things that have come out. And they're not in any particular order. Freedom, curiosity, Africa, physical movement, big skies, and self-reliance. And I'm wondering if I'm touching on the right things or not here.
Well, I think you are probably. I think the self-reliance one is very interesting because I think I am very, very self-reliant, but I also get a huge amount of help and support. So when I'm doing these big adventures, I'm with guides, local people from the community, and that's to help me so I don't die in the desert. Very important. But also to learn about the country. And I think the one you've missed, actually, so my self-reliance, I think as a person, as a human, I'm very, very self-reliant, but I do ask for help all the time and communicate with people all the time. And then I think perhaps one you've missed is connection. It's really important to me to connect to other people.
I had thought about it and I thought, is it connection or relationships? And then I thought, no, I'm going to leave that one out. So I'm really pleased that you've confirmed that I was on the right lines there.
And you actually did it in the right order because freedoms, when I see people trapped or unable to change their circumstances or being people judging them because of something that is in their appearance, that lack of freedom makes me just feel for them. I treasure my freedom. I'm so glad I was born in Scotland and that I've got all this freedom of movement and freedom to earn money and freedom as a woman. So yeah, I really, really treasure it. I really do.
I can hear that in your voice. Yeah. There's a passion in there, Alice, in terms of when you're talking about it. I want to come back to this point about self-reliance. One of the things I've noticed very prevalent with the younger generation, certainly in the UK these days, people tend, in my view, to be less self-reliant. I'm wondering what your observations are in the regions of the world that you travel in, whether there's a similar sense with younger people.
I think in the areas of the world I live in, it's very different. So in our society, individuality is very prized and people, you would live away from your parents, for example. And in the societies I live in the Middle East, it's a very communal society. So people are less self-reliant because they're community reliant, but they also take huge responsibility for their community. So in a way, it's very interesting. You've hit upon a very interesting difference, I would say, between Morocco, Middle East, Africa, where everything is based on community, and our country, where everything is based on the individual. I'm not saying either is right or wrong. Both work, but in very, very different ways. And I think that is a huge, huge difference, actually, between the places I live in.
Yeah, and it strikes me that when you're on your journey, and for example, on your more recent Saudi Arabian journey, you're there with men and camels.
Yes.
So you're not just there on your own. It is a sense of a small community that's traveling across the desert.
And it's one of the things I really enjoy. It's one of the things I absolutely treasure on my expeditions. I think because I'm not married, I don't have children, I have 2 cats. I'd like to have my more camels close to me. I live in a family community, so I'm surrounded by family that I know who've become my second family because I am alone effectively. So I really enjoy in the expedition when we're all members of the expedition. Now, not everyone, for example, in this latest one is walking. No, we've got a backup car and a cook. We've got a camelteer. So people are doing different jobs, but we're all part of the team. And I really genuinely enjoy that. And I find it interesting. Where I live in Morocco, it's very female oriented because in all the societies I tend to move in, it's gendered and the genders have different, they socialize separately, men and women, they often eat separately, except in the family. So in Morocco, when I'm at home, I'm in my little house with my four family neighbors. So it's all the women are who I socialize with primarily. I do also socialize with the men because I go walking in the mountains, but I primarily socialize with women. So one of the things I really enjoyed on my Saudi trip and on all the expeditions is I am mainly in the team, not meeting, but in the team, I'm mainly with men. And actually, I really like having that different energy.
And how do you think that they view you, given what you've just said about the societal nuances in the regions that you live and travel?
Well, I hope they love me as much as I love them. One of the many things I have in my favor, but a really big thing, and it's very important to talk about this, is age. Because I'm older, the sexual tension has gone. It really has gone. So I think that is hugely useful because the men can look at you as an auntie or a sister, an older sister, or their mother. And I'm talking about reasonably traditional communities. So that gives them a point of reference of how to behave. And then you're free to behave however. And usually people have got a sense of fun and you're doing all these silly games and fun things and little in jokes and bits of singing. So you just have fun together. And I find that makes everything okay.
That's one big advantage of getting older, isn't it, Alice?
Because I've been traveling in the Middle East since I was young, since I was in my early teens, and traveling on my own in the Middle East since I was a young woman. And it used to be so difficult and now it's so easy. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Now, for the listener who may not have visited Saudi Arabia or other countries in the Middle East or Africa, and may, as we mentioned a few moments ago, have a perception, a little bit of a fear perhaps about how they might be received in those places, what would you say to them to help them overcome their fear?
Well, I think everyone should make a judgment. And of course, countries are very, very different. I mean, don't go swanning off to the Congo at the moment. It's got a horrible civil war going on. But what I have found is just that people are so open to you and so genuinely welcoming. And there's so much to see and experience that for me, these regions are really beautiful, rich, fabulous places to go to. So do if you get the chance. But all you have to do, I mean, you do have to choose your place. I mean, you wouldn't go to Palestine at the moment, for example, sadly. But really, in terms of personal safety, so far, I've always felt very personally safe, unless there's a conflict. And if there's a conflict, then the last thing you should be doing as a tourist is going into a place of conflict where people are suffering and dying. That would be weird, frankly.
I hope you're enjoying what Alice has to say. And while this podcast is free to listen to, it's not free to make. So if you'd like to support us, then take a moment to click on the Buy Me a Coffee link on the show notes to make a small donation, which means we can buy a cup of coffee with that when producing the next episode. Your support really encourages us to continue producing quality audio content for our listeners. Now back to Alice. Now, you talked about having done so many journeys. One of the things that is a bugbear of mine, and I'm about to do myself, and you're doing it this evening as well, is packing for a trip.
Oh, God.
What do you pack as an explorer? What are your top tips for packing?
Okay, well, you've got to have enough garments that will protect you from the weather. Number one, you've got to be warm enough at night, for example. So even in the desert in Saudi Arabia, we had ice on our tents one morning. It was very exciting. So I made sure that I packed enough warm clothing for the night times, including like a mountain equipment, fantastic down jacket that I wore every night, and also mountain equipment, actually, down sleeping bag that's like for -15, because you need to be warm enough or dry enough, or actually for the very hot climates, again, that I walk in, I think you need to be fully covered and you need to wear appropriate clothing. So I'm not out there in a t-shirt and shorts. I'm in trousers and long sleeves. I cover my head, But that is partly to protect my body. I'm very fair skinned and I don't want any flesh showing because it burns. It just burns horribly. You're much better to cover up. So culturally appropriate and covered clothing for very hot regions. And then say you're packing for your tent. I mean, I'm packing now to carry all my own stuff. So I'm keeping everything to a minimum. And I've just found out that water is going to be a bit of a problem because I'm hoping a lot of the burns will still have plenty in, but I'm going to have to carry water. So it's going to be heavy, but everything else I keep to a minimum. So for example, for this 3-day walk, I've just got what I'll be wearing and then one pair of warm leggings and a fleece for nighttime, a down jacket, a lightweight one, and then waterproofs. But I'm not taking anything extra. I'm not taking anything extra, not extra knickers, no extra socks. Just take what you need. Keep it all to an absolute minimum if you're carrying it, because every gram makes a difference. And then if you're like me on my big expeditions, I've got support. And the things that you need to remember then are communications. You need to have enough battery power or solar panels to recharge your devices. And then you need to have a bit of comfort. So my top tip is a blow-up pillow. 160 grams. So the weight is insignificant. And a blow-up pillow is just going to make your life a million times better. Unfortunately, my cat in Morocco bloomin' pounced on my pillow and clawed it. So it fell down. So now I had to buy a new one from Decathlon, for this walk. But they are really good. And also, if you do a lot of walking, you might find that your legs hurt. And a blow-up pillow, you could either use it for your head or you could put it between your knees or you can elevate your ankles on it or put it under your knees just to give your legs a bit of respite. So top tip, blow-up pillow.
I knew I was going to find something very useful from you, Alice.
What's your favourite, Sue?
I think probably the simple thing is sunglasses.
Yeah.
Whether I'm in the Arctic and you've got glare from the snow or you're in a warm country like Morocco or the Middle East, sunglasses are a must.
Yeah, good point. There we go.
Now, of course, many of your journeys are done at a slow walking pace, Alice. And there is something to be said, of course, for slowing down and looking at the world from that speed and being connected to nature in a different way. As you're going along on your journeys, I'm wondering, what have you learned from the natural world about adaptability, resilience, by looking at nature around you?
Well, it's this is going to make you laugh, I hope. So I walked across Morocco and the Sahara with 6 camels, my favourite one being called Hamish. They were all male and they were in heat most of the time because of the seasons that we walked in. So I have learned more about the male psyche from walking with those camels than I ever did in my relationships and partnerships. Because when those camels were in heat, all they could think about was sex. And honestly, I swear to God, sorry guys, but I was like, oh my goodness, this is what it's like to be a bloke. This is hilarious. So just to give you an example, when a male camel's in heat, its stomach actually physiologically gets smaller. So it doesn't have to graze as much, so it can spend more time in the pursuit of lady camels. So I did. I honestly wish that I had that experience when I was 19, because it would have just informed my whole young womanhood. It really would have. So there you go.
Now, again, just coming back to the idea of storytelling, Alice, I'm curious about what's coming up in the next chapters for you in your life and your journeys that will go into that story.
Well, that's really easy because I've only walked half of Saudi Arabia. So in October, on October 10th, hopefully, I'm starting on the second leg. So I'm full planning for that. You know, one of the reasons I'm doing the coastal path is just to keep fit. I'm going to do the Hebridean Way in August, again, because it's very hot in Morocco. So I come over to Scotland, stay with my parents, and then go off and do stuff because I love being in Scotland. Of course, it's my home country. What makes God laugh? People who plan. But inshallah, God willing, the next few months are all about writing the first half of my book, getting funding for the second half of the expedition, staying fit or even getting fitter, working to earn more money, finding more sponsors because I need new sponsors for the expedition, which is always very difficult to find. And then I will be starting again in October and walking right up till Christmas. So really, the beauty of this year is it's a very all-encompassing, focused year.
And do you look further ahead than that?
I'm very determined to try and do something. My modus operandi is to try and do something very big every second year, because realistically doing something very big takes so much planning that there's got to be an element of something smaller in the years in between. So yeah, I just want to keep going basically and keep exploring. I've got a massive list of countries I want to go to. At the moment, I'd say very much at the forefront of my mind are Iraq, Algeria and Tunisia, and Chad. None of those countries are without their issues. I also just want to go to these countries and see what they have to offer and then tell other people about them. And Algeria is just really starting to try and open up and change. And it's got so many fascinating caves and petroglyphs and desert landscapes and nomadic peoples in the south. So Iraq, I just want to go to. Again, Iraq is just such a central part of Islamic civilization. And it used to be the absolute number one country before the Iraq War for learning, for medicine. It's got so many ruins and fantastic history, like rich, rich history, art, culture, food. So I really would love to go there and see what it is.
In a way, what I glean from what you're saying, the story, it seems to me, that you want to convey to us, the watcher, the listener, the reader of your books, is about the history and the culture and the civilizations of the Middle East and Africa that perhaps us in the UK and other parts of the world are less familiar with. And if you can, and you are, conveying those messages to us with such enthusiasm and in a way that makes it appealing, maybe we'll want to understand and learn more about these places. That's the sense I get.
Yeah, well, I think you're bang on. I mean, I always say I don't do anything of importance in the world, but the one thing I would like to do is promote peace and mutual understanding, one salaam alaikum at a time. Because also, I live in a very small village in the Atlas Mountains. They know a lot about Scotland. Oh my goodness, they do. Nobody's in any doubt about where Scotland is. And if you think about it, far, far away. But anyone who travels, anyone who goes outside of the country, you are also an ambassador for your country. The person from the country you've gone to who meets you will judge your country on you.
That's so true.
Maya Angelou said, and I'm paraphrasing, but she basically said that, look, travel can't change everything, but perhaps if we get to know each other more, we can become friends, or at least we can understand each other. And I do think if we try and work towards that mutual understanding, we're in a very polarized world, which is entirely unnecessary, because all that I have ever found everywhere I've been is that human beings are basically the same and that human beings are basically decent.
You're touching upon there really one of the reasons why we started this Access to Inspiration podcast was to be inspired by people who may be unlike us, or we may perceive as unlike us from other countries, other cultures, other backgrounds. And in that theme of inspiration, Alice, I'm wondering who or what inspires you?
I find myself very inspired by people who've been put in terrible situations and make every effort to come out of them. I'm inspired by my parents because they lived a very adventurous life without feeling the need, like I do, to put it all over social media, which they find hilarious. But let me give you an example, because this is the kind of person that really inspires me. So I was in Berlin last month. I've just written a blog about it actually on alicemorrison.co.uk, so you can read it there. And in the Uber on the way back to the airport, now I speak a bit of German, but my German's pretty crappy, but I do speak a bit. So I go off in German, and then the guy says his name's Hani, and I'm like, ooh, do you speak Arabic? Because he looks Middle Eastern, and he's like, yeah, I'm from Syria. So I switch to Arabic, and we have the most amazing conversation for the next 45 minutes. Now, Hani is a young man in his 30s. He fled from Syria when the war started, the civil war. He was put into prison for a week underground. Now, we've all just seen those pictures of those underground prisons. He was captured and put in prison underground because he was from an area called Idlib, which is actually where the new leader comes from. And that was why when he came out of that prison after a week, his father said, you have to go, you have to run, you have to go. And so he ran. He got to Greece in a boat, and then he walked. He and 24 other men walked from Greece to Germany. They couldn't carry anything. They were hiding. They were illegal. So they survived on 2 Snickers a day, which is one of the things I write about. And these men, they walked to Germany. Germany took them in. So absolute kudos to Germany. He is now a taxi driver, but he's trained as a marketeer and a businessman. And he says he will go back to Syria when he can, because when it's safe. He married his wife, who was also a refugee from the same village that his mum matchmaked for him in Syria, because she's still there. And he had to leave because his life was genuinely in danger. I said to him, what are you looking forward to most about going back to Syria? This is what he said, and I want you to imagine this is you. He said, I want to visit my father's grave because my father died while I was here and I haven't seen his grave. And that's the truth for so many people in our world. And it's like, that's the people who inspire me. This young man, he's living his life. He's just got married. He's earning his money. He doesn't want to be an Uber driver, but he's earning enough money to live. He's applied for residency in Germany. And when he can, he will go back home. That's who inspires me.
And I think you're just summarising your earlier point that basically people are good and they have the same heart the world over. We just happen to live and operate in different regions, in different cultures.
Yeah, exactly.
So my final question to you, Alice, as we draw this fascinating conversation to a close, is on the subject of food, because that is certainly always my number one motivator on expedition, is what I'm having next to eat when I'm struggling with dehydrated food or whatever it might be. So I'm wondering, when you're in those tough times on your travels, what do you look most forward to eating?
Well, it genuinely, I look forward to the next thing, whatever that might be. I have to give a shout out to Abu Abdullah, who was our cook for the Saudi expedition, because he was in the car. So he was driving the backup car. He had a pressure cooker that he plugged into the cigarette lighter, and he cooked the most amazing meals in this pressure cooker. So his kind of go-to was rice and either chicken or meat, but with lots and lots of spices. So we ate breakfast at 7:30 and we're on the road by 8:30. And then we had snacks at around 1:30, like orange, some biscuits, crisps, whatever. And then we'd eat when we finished, which would usually be about 4. So by 4:00, you're absolutely ravenously hungry because you've walked a half marathon. Honestly, I was so hungry. And then you'd come up and you'd be like, and Abu Abdullah would be sitting there with this great big pressure cooker, which he'd then flip upside down and it would kind of explode onto a shared platter, because in Saudi, you eat on the ground with your hands. And it would always be so delicious. So honestly, I look forward to the next thing. But in this case, it was always good because he just cooked so well. And Sue, I don't know what you think. I'm lucky enough that my expeditions, I'm usually with camels or backup trucks or backup cars or whatever. So we have real food. But I do think, an army marches on his stomach. I'd say an adventurer marches on her stomach also.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I was out with some Bedouin and camels going across the Wadi Rum desert, and I had exactly the same experience as you of what you would think would be virtually nothing. An amazing feast appeared every evening, and it's at those moments that definitely can put a smile on your face.
Yeah, and you're also hungry. I mean, that's the other thing. I think the other thing about doing physical things is your body's doing its natural thing, so you're actually hungry. You're not just psychologically hungry, you're physically really hungry, and that's a great feeling.
Absolutely. Well, it's leaving me hungry for more conversation with you, Alice, but of course, sadly, we have to draw things to a close.
I see what you did there.
And I know we will put links on the show notes to your social media and to your website, alicemorrison.co.uk.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome. Maybe I could just say that, like, my social media, Instagram and Twitter and so on, are all Alice out there and the number 1. And then my podcast is Alice in Wonderland with an A.
Well, lovely to speak to a fellow Scot, a fellow adventurer, and I'm sure that your conversation today will inspire many of our listeners. So thank you, Alice. And if you want to follow Alice's adventures, check out her website at alicemorrison.co.uk, and you can follow her on social media. We'll put links on the show notes. And of course, don't forget to listen to her own podcast, which is called Alice in Wonderland. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and follow us on the platform that you're listening to us on, and share this episode with just one other person that needs a little bit of inspiration today. Thanks for listening. And next time we will be back with our 150th episode. And we've got a fantastic guest, Chris Tompkins, one of the most influential conservation philanthropists of our time. I hope you can join us then.